Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. As I said at the end of my last Cobra video, next one that I was going to be doing was going to be on installing the ARB air compressor system in the Gladiator. So here you can see all the parts I have. I've got the single compressor, the air filler kit, the remote chuck, I've got an extension air line. I also have an extension vent line because this is low in the chassis, and just in case I go wading through deep water, just want to eliminate any opportunity for water to get into the compressor. And then I also have from Wrangler the ARB mount for the firewall as well as their heat shield. So got that stuff ordered. I am basically going to be following their instructions for the most part, other than where I mount my air chuck. I think I'm going to mount it more under the hood versus off the front bumper like they have in their video. But I will put a link in here for their website, which has the link to the video, and they're right up on the installation as well, just so you have that to reference. This video is going to be more of kind of an overview and a slight review of everything versus a detailed installation. It is all pretty straightforward, and everything is documented in their video and write-up. So I'm going to get started on the work. All right, so here we are. Fender is off. I'm going to add a little tip here. It is kind of mentioned in the online instructions that you should probably buy clips just to be safe. I know in his video, the Way of Life, they did not break any. I broke 3/4 of my clips. They all snapped, so you are going to make sure you want to have Fender retaining clips to replace the ones that you break when you take it off. I did pull all of the remnants out of the holes, so it's time to start installing the compressor. And here we are. We've got the heat shield and mounting bracket from Way of Life mounted onto the compressor. I did go ahead and loosen the collar here and here so that it'll pivot and I can adjust it when I go to mount it on the firewall, but you can see how everything is bolted together. The bracket does, or the heat shield does come as a flat sheet. You will have to bend it as necessary, but it does have the perforations in it to allow you to bend it easier. So next is going to be to get this mounted up on the firewall. Everything is tightened up. Apologize for the noise. Neighbors cutting grass. You probably hear the mower in the background. I will say you're going to need a small 1/4 inch drive ratchet with both deep well, short well, and an extension, as well as some 10mm box wrenches to get to the 3 upper nuts and then the 1 lower nut, just because you have to use a little bit of creative access just to get to them. But it is possible, and everything is tight right now, so now it is going to be time to run the filter and all the other lines for the compressor. All right, so as you can see, I've got all the fittings mounted on the compressor. Everything's tightened as far as the angle of where the compressor is going to go. The next step is to run the braided extension line. So what my plan is up top, there's a stud for the ECU mount right here. I had a plastic spacer laying around that I had located. I'm going to use that, as well as the nut that came off of that bracket when we first started installing this for the wiring harness down under here when we had to pivot this around. So I had that spare nut, so I'm going to use that. That thread's on there. And then I'm using this bracket from the kit, the remote air kit. I'm going to mount the chuck in the top hole here, and then I drilled a hole in the center there. There's some wet paint on it right now just to keep it from rusting. And then I'm going to use this to mount on that one stud, and then I put a piece of foam on the bottom there. That way I'm not drilling anything into my sheet metal. I didn't want to have to use any zip screws or anything like that. So that is the next step in getting everything mounted up. And here's the final result of the plumbing. As you can see, I used some zip ties to get everything nice and tight against where I could possibly do the plastic spacers for the brake lines. That way there's none of this stainless line, the braid rubbing on any brake lines or anything like that. I mean, I doubt it would cause an issue, but you have the possibility of over time it rubbing through. So this way it's held tight up against plastic in most places, not rubbing on the hydraulic lines. And then here it is from up above, the final mounting there, and how it's snaked down, and it's zip tied there to the wiring harness. And then over here again on the plastic for the brake lines. And then we've got the port right here. This wiring harness can just move out of the way in either direction, and it's nice and solidly mounted right there on the bracket for the ECU. So there we go. Everything as far as the air system is mounted. Now I just need to get the wiring done. And here you can see I've started wiring things up. The 2 wires for the pressure sensor have been connected here, and then I connected the power lead to the compressor. These 2 other plugs are for lockers. If you had the solenoids for doing the lockers, I'm not installing those on the vehicle, so those are just gonna hang here loose. You can see I ran the wiring right here, zip tied it into an existing wire, and then the fuse for the compressor is here. And then going up and over, you can see the relay right there. I zip tied that to an existing harness. So that's all in place. And then I'm going to go ahead and route the harness itself behind the engine over to the battery box. So as you can see, I ran the wire along the firewall. I zip tied it to the breather line that comes off of my oil catch can. So it follows behind the engine, and zip tied a few places there. And then it's coming out right here, meshing with the other harness. So here I have the positive and 2 negatives. And then behind the fuse box, I have run around the wire, which will be the trigger wire assembly. As stated previously, this vehicle has the 4 auxiliary switches from the factory. So I am going to use aux 1, which is right here. It is the tan with red or pink wire. This is the one that will be the aux 1 switch. So I'm going to tie this in to the trigger wire of the harness from the compressor. So I'm going to go ahead and get these cleaned up and soldered together. And here we have the final result. I went ahead and I used a solder connector to solder the 2 wires together. It's the red off of the compressor harness, and then, like I said, the tan and pink from the Jeep harness. I put a heat shrink tube over that just to double insulate it. And then I used electrical tape to tape in the 3 remaining terminals underneath the harness from the compressor harness, since those aren't being used, since I'm not using lockers. And then I went and reused the factory fabric tape just to put everything back together. So I'll just go ahead and zip tie, this length of harness together, tuck it down in the fender well, and then we'll be done with that portion of the harness. All right, and here is the positive wire. I used heat shrink on it, and the connector, it's on one of the positive lugs. And then same thing on the ground side, I have the 2 ground wires, very small one and the big one, all in one lug with heat shrink, or all in one connector with heat shrink on the ground lug. So that should conclude the wiring of this. As you can see, everything's been routed and tucked as nicely as possible. So we should be able to go ahead and test this thing and make sure it fires up and doesn't leak. And one more thing before I started for the first time that I forgot to show earlier. Here is the remote mount filter. As you can see down here, it's got a fitting on the top of the inlet. There's a rubber hose that follows up inside the wheel well. And then I've got the filter zip tied to, same thing, the oil breather line going to the catch can. So this just keeps it higher air intake for the compressor, just in case you go through any water or anything. So that is where the air inlet is located for the compressor. All right, and I've hooked up the hose to the port in the engine bay. So let's turn this thing on and make sure it works. So turn the card on, and aux 1. And I had already turned it on once. There we go, you can hear it running. I did spray it down with some soapy water. I didn't see any bubbles or anything, so it appears everything is good to go. So this is the compressor install. Everything seems to be working fine. Everything as wired, it works properly. Last thing I want to do is I'm going to deflate the tire down to 20 psi and see how long it takes to get it back up to stock pressure. All right, so test completed. Ran this tire down to 20 psi, plugged in the compressor, turned it on. 1 minute, 39 seconds to get it up to 37 psi. These are the factory 33s on my Rubicon. Previously, using a cigarette lighter plug-in compressor from the auto parts store, it was about 15 minutes per tire. So I've now gone from an hour of airing up after going wheeling down to about 10 minutes tops of airing up after going wheeling. Huge savings, well worth the money, very happy. As far as the install goes, again, very happy with the Way of Life brackets. All worked out well. Pretty straightforward. There is a good review on their site. Yeah, I would definitely recommend this mod, especially if you're someone who goes wheeling. I love the port location that I chose, very easily accessible. It's actually tucked away pretty nicely as well, so it's not in the way of anything, and it'll allow, you know, great use of the ARB hose as far as being able to get to all four corners of the vehicle. So last thing I need to do is just get the fender mounted back on, and we should be good to go. All right, and job complete. Fender is reinstalled. As you can see down here, nothing is pushing on the fender liner or whatnot. It all tucked in nicely. Everything went back where it's supposed to go. There is actually room for movement on the fender. It's not pushed or not tied up against anything. So yeah, this seems to be a pretty good win. So very happy, as I said previously. Definitely highly recommend this mod, especially if you're someone who off-roads your vehicle and you have to air down and air back up. This will definitely save you a lot of time and is worth having, and it's basically completely hidden away, so you have no bulky gear or anything like that to load into the back of the truck or whatnot. So basically just your air hose and your chuck underneath the seat or something along those lines. So hope you enjoy the install. There's going to be more to come on this vehicle, as well as my other two, the Cobra and the MR2. You'll see more videos coming soon. The next one will probably be going back to the Cobra as far as getting that thing road ready, but eventually I will be installing the rock slides on this truck as well. So look forward, or look ahead for those videos. If you enjoy what you see, please like and subscribe, and more to come. Thanks for watching and have a great day.